So it's the end of the year, and we already know that there's a lot of financial aspects that we don't track very well throughout the year. I've created this Royal Financial Hub template that will help you to track your finances from month to month and also even track your team payroll and every other thing. So I'm going to show you how I utilize this. What I use inside of Airtable are tables. If you're not familiar with Airtable is basically a boost of Excel. It allows you to have data, you have other columns, you have the ability to do formulas and other great functionalities inside of the system. So how I do this by year, I have a forecast table. The forecast table is pulling all the projections, my goals, my monthly revenue, my expenses, my salary, my gross, and it just connects it to the quarter. So line by line, I have January through December, all of my projections rolling up from my projections tab. And then I have all of my goals rolling up based on what I've set as goals for a formula. And these are very cute because what I have is like a smiley face that essentially gives me how close are you to your goal versus how far are you to your goal. And this formula is very useful if I wanted to compare my month revenue versus my goal, which I've set. And then it would show me a crown if it is at the goal, and it will show me a sad face, if you want to put this, if it's not at the goal. I like utilizing this because I have some hidden fields that I can hide, and I can show you what that rev goal is. So all of these rev goals are numbers that you can pop in. So if I put in here $1 million, that would be my rev goal for that month. And as close as I get to that amount, then I'd be able to kind of see it go closer and closer to that rev goal. Now I'm going to show you, as you can see here, I'm going to show you exactly how to utilize this. So my actual project payments are what comes through Stripes. And so with Stripe, it pulls in the exact payment amount, the date. I have a formula that actually puts in the data for the month. And then I have a manual process where I like to select the service type. Now I do this manually because of the fact that I like to just touch bases to see exactly what service, because the client can have multiple services. So I want to make sure I'm allocating it to the right one. And then this is an automation that says, hey, once this client comes in, automatically says this is additional payment and round it up to their pay to date total, which is on this task, and I'll show you. And then also this adds the quarter, so it kind of rounds up to, okay, Q3 to Q4, all the things. So this gives me a full vision as to what I've made, what date I've made it, the month that it was in. This is another formula that kind of copies over here, reasons being because I kind of set it up that way. Other thing that I do is I actually pull through the year by year. So I actually hide columns year by year and create a new column for the new year so I can track it that way. And so what I do, if I wanted to see payments by month, I can actually create another view, and this would break it down based on the month. So if I wanted to filter through this, and then I can say, hey, what month this is, I can break it down by the month. I can make as many views that I want. And then I can also, if I wanted to just add a manual payment, I can create a form that just allows me to add a payment manually. Then you have projections. So projections are, in my mind, what my expectations are. It's kind of like a forecast, but it's a manual forecast for me because I like to just keep it a little bit manual. I like to see where the money is flowing. And I also like to see what potential prospects I have coming in. So I can just utilize the forecast, which is a linked column from this forecast here. As you can see, it's pulling in here. And so what this does is says, hey, based on my ongoing test clients, I actually have them doing an hourly amount of this much, the reoccurring amount is this much. And what will happen is I can add the month that I expect that payment to come through. This gives me the ability to say, oh, actually they're taking a pause in January. So I don't have to put January. But if I say October, I would have expected this amount coming in on my forecast, you're going to see that it expected the projection of 150. Now, of course, it's going to also take a look at what my goal was. It's going to take a look at what I actually achieved, which is going to be my actuals. But you can actually see the difference in the total at the gross up here. So now let's go further. So we understand projections are going to be what I focus on for my existing clients that are ongoing, so I can see what the forecast would be. Then I can do potential clients so I can see what the forecast would be for those months. So if I were to say I'm expecting $30,000 inside of December, in my forecast, it would also pull a projection of $30,000. So that projection will round up, and then it will say, hey, you actually met your goal because you've received over the goal limit that you've had. And even though I didn't meet my projection, you can see what my expenses were, what my salary was. This is the manual fill. So if I took out $20,000 for a salary and I said, okay, this is my salary, this is my gross now. My gross is going to be negative because, of course, it doesn't add up. But that's how it would kind of calculate. So let's move forward to expenses, see how this works. My expenses are going year by year. So my expenses also, and I've built this out so that you could be able to see month by month. You can see the different categories that you want, but it'll all total up. I personally like to just use these categories, but if you wanted to make it as detailed as possible, you can simply just duplicate this field and create that field to just have it to show the expense type that you want. Of course, you want to match the forecast to that month. So the simplest way is once you create the months, copy this and then just paste it over here, and then we'll just connect it to the forecast. I like to also connect my P&L if I'm being very accurate with my bank reconciliations every month, and I like to just attach it so I have everything in one space. And the good thing is that as many things that I add here, it will calculate it at this corner here. So and put $100 here, and you'll see that it's going to occur each time. Don't have salary here because I like to do the salary from the forecast just so that I can see, okay, reasonably enough, I've made this amount. I'd like to take out this as a salary. So even if I'll change this to $2,000 instead. So you can see from the deduction, this is my gross. This is what I'm netting from the month. This will be in my bank account. Now with the expenses, again, you can make sure that you just add any extra fields that you want. Adding a field is pretty easy. So you'd add a field by whatever field type you want. The only thing that I would make sure you note is that this is a formula field. So you'll come here to edit and add that expense here. Once you do that, then it'll automatically calculate once you are adding more expenses in. So managing my team is amazing because I get to see what I'm doing for bonuses, and I just added the name and said, okay. And I can also add this because I'm going to be utilizing this exact data sheet to do year by year. So I can make these all 2023. And when I want to do 2024, I can just hide these columns and then do a 2024 sheet. That would make it a lot easier. I like to do my month by month payroll as well in here to just track it. So as you can see, you'll have a month by month just overview of what I paid them. At the bottom, it does do a sum. So you don't technically need to sum as well at the top, but I like to see the total at the top so that I can see it. You will just again add a formula field, and I can call this total. Locate the formula field and then just hit sum. And you would add the month by month. So I could put January and it'll populate the name field. And then I'll just put 2 here. So I'll just put January and let's do September. So once I do it this way, and that's 2024. So once I do it, it allows me to get that total. I can also edit this field again and format it in the way I want. I like seeing currency because this is talking about currency. So it'll round up like that. So you can see the total amounts for that amount. You can also have views so where it'll pull the next year. So as I mentioned, you can hide the views here. And then once you want to actually set up the new year, you can add the views that you want. So all of my other views are hidden. They don't have like an archived feature inside of Airtable, but the hide just does very well. So I do all of that to make it easier for me. And then what I like to do, and I haven't actually done this as yet, but it may be something I do in the future, is me adding it as a roundup to here. I like to just do the number at end of the year, but I can add this as a roundup. What this roundup would do is say, oh, okay, so you've based on the month, you've paid XYZ for all of your teammates. So that's how that works. Now, my services change year by year because I look at the overall total revenue that comes in month by month, and I make an analysis if I want to keep up with that service or if it just needs to be modified or what can I do. So because I like to have different types of services, and these are all of my actual services, what I look at is what are the revenue totals that I've hit? What were my goals? Did I reach any of them? Should I archive some, or should I plan to do more for the new year? So there's statuses that I've created that says those exact things. So those statuses are active, planning, and archived. And this is just internal, so it doesn't do anything on the front end. It doesn't actually hit, like these statuses don't hit the forecast, but the actual statuses do show up, or the naming field actually shows up inside of this actual payment. So I can select that and it goes towards the services total. So if I were to say, okay, I looked at the revenue in 2023 for this service, I can see the quarter by quarter. So in Q3, I made X amount. Okay, that's great. So I could be able to, look at it and say, okay, this is the total and this is things that I need to focus on for the year. This is pulling from a hidden field that I don't even know where it is right now. So that's why the number is throwing off. But if I were to look at each service, I look at it and I calculate, I don't think it's worth keeping for the new year. So I'll just archive it. Me archiving it means that I won't offer this service anymore, but I can see the past revenue that was built there. Lastly, what I like to show as well is the client point, the pay to date. With the pay to date, what I love to do is it simply pulls out the payments from the actual. So it's pulling those payments amounts, and I can obviously hide this because it's not going to show me anything that I need to see right now. It's just literally linking everything. But if I want to see a pay to date, I can see, oh, okay, so client one paid me $14K for the entire process of us working together. I can see that on a total standpoint, and it has been helpful for me to just track the data. Now, just to recap, I want to kind of go back through the table so you can understand what the focus points are and why I utilize them. So for forecasts, it's a summary of all of my monthly revenue, my expenses, my salary, and it showcases my gross. So I love to use this to kind of forecast all of my overall year's projections. The actuals are going to be what's paid in the current month by the date as well as by the service. It also totals up the client pay to date, so I can see everything by one view, and I can also see what quarter it was built in. I can make different views if I want to see it month by month, but I really just love seeing it in an overall scale. And I can also create a form that allows me to simply make an additional payment without having to have it come through from that payment processor. My projections are completely manual, but I like to simply add the upcoming payments that I project for that month. So it could be a prospect, it could be an actual project that I'm going to have an expected partial payment for, whatever that is. I like to utilize this to kind of proceed and summarize that. I also like to utilize the status to see what type of offer they are. So if I'm billing them as needed, if it's completed, if it's a final payment, things like that. My expenses are tracking my month by month overall expenses. I've separated them by columns so I could be able to see where I'm actually spending the most money. I do this month by month, but I also have my P&L added to it month by month. If I'm being very true to my bank reconciliation, I can grab that. I can also connect it to a forecast month, which will then showcase inside of the forecast on the expenses column. On my team, I like to track the month-by-month payment that I did do for payroll. I like to do it year by year, but I also like to see it as a Q1 to 4 bonus structure. So I like to see exactly what did I give them for bonus. It doesn't show anything else, and I can actually rename this to say quarter bonuses. So this just gives me the bonuses. I can see the payroll overall by the view of seeing it month by month, and I can do it year by year as well. I can also create a view to summarize this all, and I can create an interface if I wanted to, but that goes into depth. This services table allows me to see all of my active services. It can allow me to do a complete status update and change. I can even sort this by this active based on pending and things like that. I can also see what is my most revenue driven service, so I can do as many sorts as I want. I can even group them by active versus, what they are. And I can also see them over here by what is drawing the most revenue. So you can see it that way. I hope that makes sense. The next thing that I like to do is see the client payments paid to date. So I like to see everything that is paid to date based on the client. This does calculate it by a roll up. So if I were to make a change here and say, oh, this client is actually not client 1, this is client 2, then if I come back to this client paid to date, it would actually switch it. So client 2 now has that revenue and client 1 is deducted. So this is a very quick way to see how many services a client has paid for. I hope that was helpful. This has been a game changer in my business. And again, the template will be available for free to use, but I'm also available to help set up this process if you would like to. And I thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to you seeing another video.